James, I hope you remembered to turn in your application to be the next manager of the Cleveland Guardians because they still don't have one. Hi, guys. I'm Melanie. That's James. Thanks for sticking with us through this little hiatus we've been on in the month of October since the season's ended. I hope everybody's enjoying their fall/winter if you're in the Northeast Ohio area. James, how's your off season going so far?
Not as good as yours. I know it's been a while since we got together to record, and we have quite a few different things to talk about tonight. But why don't you tell us a little about how your off seasons went and where you're at now?
Yeah. So those of you who don't know or didn't see the video last week, I got married on October 13th.
Hey,
Friday the
congratulations.
13th. Thank you so much. It was fun. Went on a little getaway mini honeymoon the next week. So got to unplug a little bit, which was much needed. And, real life is great. So I can't complain. I know sports is the focus sometimes, but it feels good when the real life is kind of moving along too. So I'm very grateful for all the love and support.
I'm going to be honest, Mel. I'm going to be watching you record tonight and see if you look a little bit different now, because you know how it is in sports when they say some of these guys or whatever get married and, maybe their play is going to slump a little bit. So I'm going to watch and see how you're doing and whether or not you're able to still reach that same bar or if there's a little bit of change.
You know how it goes, James. Now the home improvement projects start. I took her to the Wednesday Addams themed house Airbnb, and it was all black. So the minute we got home, the front door was black. We got a new lock for the front door. That's black. Bathroom remodel about to get underway. So we're 5 years in form right here. It's impressive.
Well, you're remodeling, and so is Progressive Field with all the upgrades that they're making, with the turf being gone and all the money being spent there to help renovate the Progressive Field. I'm excited to see it, even though it won't be finished by opening day, or it's going to go in the next year. But
yeah, it's going to be in phases, right?
Yeah,
they're doing it in 3 phases or something. I heard. I just went down there. I was downtown today. I had to go into the office for work, and it's weird seeing all the construction stuff outside. They even started it towards the end of the season. The last game I went to, they started putting everything up, getting ready. So they definitely weren't wasting any time. And the front office also didn't waste any time beginning to interview managerial candidates. As we know, as of this recording, the next manager of the Cleveland Guardians has not been announced yet, but there is a lot of smoke around it, which I'm a little bit surprised about. As we all know, our front office kind of works in secrecy. They don't really leak much to the media. John Morosi's had stuff about it. Jeff Passon's had stuff about it. Just some local beat reporters in the Milwaukee area regarding Craig Counsell. So, James, just kind of where we stand now. We've all heard Stephen Vogt. He was kind of the first big name to surface in this search. He's currently I believe the bullpen coach for the Seattle Mariners. He's former catcher. They typically turn out to be great managers because they're kind of managing in the game already. Nobody's really said a bad thing about the guy. He's a great person. He's a young, analytical type mind, which he checks a lot of boxes, but he would be a first-time manager and kind of a big jump, bullpen coach to manager. So we'd see how that shakes out. There's Clayton McCullough. I think he's the first base coach for the Los Angeles Dodgers. I don't know much about him, but I love kind of plucking from successful organizations. I don't think you could really go wrong with that. I think even from an interview, I think you could gain some insight. And then a couple other names have been thrown around, but I really think it's going to, and then Craig Counsell interviewed Monday. The photos of him eating lunch at the airport outside of a gate destined for Cleveland began to surface on Sunday night. And sure enough, he did interview in Cleveland on Monday. What's interesting, though, James, is Craig Counsell does not have an interview scheduled yet with the Houston Astros, and he has yet to interview with the New York Mets. Another piece to the puzzle is just last night, pretty late last night, Paul Hoynes announced that Mike Starbog wouldn't be returning, which is a bummer. He's one of the best third base coaches in the business, and I don't think anybody could really argue that point. We don't know if he chose not to come back. He got a better opportunity. It does make me think an announcement is close, though, and it makes me wonder if a manager coming in would want to bring in members of his own staff, or he has his own guys in mind, which is fine. I mean, that's pretty typical of a new manager to at least bring some of his own guys. But what do you make of all these kind of tidbits we're getting from this, James? Do you have any thoughts on these potential candidates?
Well, it's just Craig Counsell is thinking about whether or not, he's using us for leverage for the Mets, whether he's for returning back to Milwaukee. The guy, he's had a lot of success with the Brewers.
Yeah.
And thankfully,
with not much money either.
Right. And thankfully, with that experience, that would be something that would be beneficial to bring in where he already has the managerial experience. I know that you're leaning as much as the analytical side and the youth movement. But, as you watch the playoffs and you see the old guys, Dusty Baker and Bruce Bochy, going at it to get to the World Series in the ALCS, it's still, I still think there's a lot to be said about the old crusty managers that still are out there that can get there. You think back, how old Tommy Lasorda was with the Dodgers, back to even when Sparky Anderson looked like he was 174 years old, managing the Tigers after his time with the Reds. So I think in Major League Baseball, there's just a lot to be said to having that experience. Even though, the analytical stuff is popular right now, I still think that game experience and the having some of that managerial experience has helped. What do you think about that contrast in the World Series, though? Because you got Bruce Bochy and you got Torey Lovello. How have you been watching that series, and have you noticed anything from a managerial side that moves that the guys are making?
Yeah, I also that's a good point you bring up, too, because I think in the playoffs, too, it does become like a chess match between managers. And as we know, Torey Lovello and the Diamondbacks knocked Craig Counsell and the Brewers out in the wild card round. And it's no surprise Craig Counsell, they've gotten bounced pretty early in the playoffs. And then it's how much is the players, how much is on those managerial type decisions. Because we know in the postseason, and, we've seen it throughout this whole postseason, like Rob Thompson with the Phillies was really playing chess, like with his bullpen. Like he didn't care about eighth inning, setup man, ninth inning closer. It's whatever the highest leverage spots were, that's when he's bringing in his guys. The whole righty-lefty thing, matching up that way. I did think it was interesting, too, yesterday that the Rangers are really testing the Diamondbacks' pitching depth, right? And we always talk about how important pitching depth is in the playoffs. And it just got thinner because Max Scherzer's now off the World Series roster with that back injury. On the offensive side, Adolis Garcia's out. He's just been on an abnormal type run since they booed him in Houston. He's been fun to watch. That's a bummer, but it's also November and they're still playing baseball. Like, these guys are probably exhausted. I think Torey Lovello, we're going to learn a lot tonight because I think his team's out of gas. They're young kids. They've had an absolutely amazing run in these playoffs, and I don't think anybody predicted them to be here when the season started. Probably not even Arizona fans.
Right.
But we're also seeing, too, like guys like Corbin Carroll and Brandon Pfaadt. Like, these rookies are coming in. Evan Carter on the Rangers. These rookies are coming up in their first postseason, and they're making an impact. Like, the lights are not too bright for these kids. And this World Series is so interesting, not just from the managerial perspective with the age difference, but like the organizational difference too. Like you have the Texas Rangers who pretty much went out and tried to buy a World Series, like last offseason, Corey Seager, Marcus Semien, then now Jacob deGrom. They trade for Max Scherzer. Like they really attacked free agency and they did it well. But then you have the Diamondbacks who really developed from within. So Torey Lovullo is kind of trying to mix these rookies in, where Bruce Bochy, it's like Seager's your shortstop, Semion's your second baseman. You know, Scherzer's getting the ball every 5 days when he's healthy. But I think Bruce Bochy has done an incredible job because nobody expected DeGrom and Scherzer and John Gray to all go down with injuries.
Right.
And they're in the World Series now.
And that's why there's something to be said for all that experience and why they brought him in the first place. I mean, all they had to do is look at Houston and what they did, and when they went to Dusty Baker, and now Dusty Baker's retiring, they knew what they needed to do to compete within their own division, let alone the American League. And you know that we if you want to look at spending money, and we talked about that in some of our preseason predictions throughout the season as well. And I remember when we had Paul on, he was talking about, you know, it's not always about spending money, and that's correct. However, you got to spend it wisely, and there are risks, and you do have to take risk, and other teams can afford to do that more than we can. But you can see when you have a Scherzer that goes down, and then you have Garcia that goes down, that they have enough there to still continue on. Look at that. Yeah. What do they have? Is it a 10-game win streak in the playoffs on the road right now? I think it's 10 games. It's
unbelievable. They've been better on the road than at home. And you have to think, too, when they ended their season, they were out west. They were in Seattle, and they had to win those games to get in the playoffs. Then they had to, you know, fly over Texas, go to Tampa for the wild card round. Then it's on to Baltimore for the divisional series. Then they got to come home for their couple home games in the ALDS. But, like, it's crazy what they've been able to do, and I think that right there is where that managerial experience comes into play. Like, do we need to take batting practice today, or do my guys need to rest their legs and get ready for tonight? Or whatever the case may be, that's a situation where an experienced manager isn't going to panic. He's going to keep his guys calm, cool, collected, and go take care of business so they can get home. That's why, like, Craig Counsell, of course, would be my first choice. But like you said, I'm pretty sure it's a leverage play. I see him probably going back to Milwaukee. I think his big thing is like getting more money for managers, which is commendable. But you're right. Like when I watch these playoff games, and we've had it for so long with Terry Francona that I can't believe we're doing a podcast on the Guardians and we're talking about a manager. And we all knew it was coming. But it's like we haven't had to do this since what, 2012?
Yeah.
2013. Like I was in college, and now Tito had such a long tenure here. We're just now talking about a manager, and like we don't even know what to do with ourselves. The Cavs go through it often. The Browns go through it often, up until Stefanski, who's been here for a few years now. But like we're used to it with the other teams, but the Guardians, I think we all look to for stability. So we're all a little uneasy, like, okay, the World Series may end tonight, and that's kind of when the offseason kicks off. And I think it's going to be a really big offseason for this organization. And obviously you have to have your manager in place first because you want their input too. Like what kind of lineups do they want to run out there? What kind of, you know, skills? How do they make their lineups? Obviously you want to know all those things. But like I was thinking too, like reminiscent about Tito, and this is the last thing I'll say about the manager search. But I'm sure you saw it, James, the graphic of this being like the lowest rated, one of the lowest rated viewed World Series, like of recent memory. And guess what number one was? The Cubs and the Indians. And It takes me back there. And it's this 3-1 lead, all this 3-1 lead talk stuff today. Like, do the Rangers have it in the bag already? Are they going to be one of those teams who blow a 3-1 lead? And I just go back to 2016 and I think of that rain delay and it just makes me want to cry. But it's just one of many like great postseason moments we had with Tito. So it's going to be weird seeing someone else in that dugout.
But I agree what you were talking about with Greg Council when you said about do they want their own guys? And to me, being in management myself and switching and working for different companies, it seems like as you're getting in, you're getting your feet wet and you're getting organized, you get to know your people. There's a lot of times where you look back and you're like, man, if I still had this person and plug them in, we could click faster and get things done better. So there's no doubt. I mean, it happens in the NFL too. You want to get your guys in there. I think that's why head coaches in the NFL, you typically get, at least 3 years, because your first staff is not going to be exactly all who you want. You know what I mean? You're going to settle on some people. So will he be able to bring, or whoever it is, are they going to be able to bring enough of their own guys? I think that's very important because as a manager, you want to be able to rely on the people around you, but you're also replacing a future Hall of Famer that has developed the chemistry in that clubhouse where they can play loose, they can be themselves, but they respect the game, they hustle. And how is this young ball club going to adjust to somebody that is younger? Is it going to make it easier for them?
Right.
But if that manager is a more direct type manager and is very black and white, how are they going to handle that? So there's a lot to be figured out. I mean, we're always trying to figure it out in April because the weather's so crappy, and just trying to get into May with a winning record. You're switching lineups here and there just to see what works, what doesn't. But I really hope next year that gets settled down sooner than later. It seemed like the lineup changes just never stopped last year. There were so many guys we were trying to get in, whether it was through injuries or just because of it seemed like balanced talent in certain spots, or Ahmed Rosario was plugging up shortstop.
In the 2-hole.
Yeah. So, that manager's definitely got their work cut out for them, but they at least have a really good foundation.
And it's like, who are they going to have? Like, how big of a role are our young kids going to play that he's going to have to mix and match guys? I can't really see them going another off season without moving off some of these middle infield prospects. But, as far as helping this team out offensively, the Guardians got a couple guys down in the Arizona Fall League right now who actually just got named Arizona Fall League All-Stars today. And that's Chase DeLauter and Kyle Manzardo, who they got from the Tampa Bay Rays for Aaron Savali. But Keith Law had some fascinating things to say about both of those guys, both of which are top 5 prospects, according to almost all, prospect publications. So obviously they're going to play a very big role in this team's future moving forward. Obviously, I think Kyle Manzardo is a little bit ahead of Chase DeLauter. They'll probably start Chase DeLauter, the outfielder, at AAA because he hasn't played there yet. And he's coming off that foot injury. He missed part of last season recovering from the foot surgery that he had after they drafted him. But I've seen, first we'll kind of talk about Chase DeLauter and the outfield because, as we know, our outfield needs offensive help. I think, James, we said on a prior podcast that Stephen Kwan is great at what he does. He's a great leadoff hitter. He's an outstanding left fielder. But Stephen Kwan cannot be your best outfielder. Yes. And Chase DeLauter is a guy who could help in that area. And throughout the summer, I've seen so many comparisons because he's got this kind of choppy, herky-jerky swing that concerns a lot of scouts. Like, he's kind of like cheating to fastballs, which obviously will be exposed the closer he gets to the major leagues. But a lot of people have compared it to Kyle Tucker, too. And I don't really like player comps. I don't like putting players in this box. I like to see what they could develop into on their own without kind of capping their potential. But here's what Keith Law said about Chase DeLauter. He's still got a really awkward swing, opening his hips early with his lead elbow so high that it's restricting his bat path. So it looks sawed off and doesn't let him get to much power. I didn't see any hard contact from him in 2 games, but it's really the shape of the swing and the way his hips work that bother me. He still looks like he's cheating to get the fastballs, and pitchers will attack him accordingly if that's the case. He did play excellent defense in right field with an easy plus arm. So there's a lot to kind of dissect there, but I think and let's just, all this stuff's great and scouting reports, but he's tore up high A, he's tore up double A, no issues. Like, he's tearing the cover off the ball everywhere he goes. Would we like him to get to more of that power? Absolutely. It's the main hole we have in our outfield, right? But again, when we moved Nolan Jones and Will Benson, this organization put a lot of faith in George Valera, who had a down year last year. So I think that's why more eyes are on Chase DeLauter now. But again, I don't think kind of an awkward swing has to be the end of him. And I still think he could be really successful, and it might just work for him. What do you kind of think, James, about what Keith's saying about Chase DeLauter?
I mean, he did have, once he got healthy and was at Lake County, every time I was looking at their stats for when I would go on Twitter to look at their page, it was all about his night. And then making that jump to Akron later in the season and really not skipping a beat. Now, he didn't have as many games there as he did at Single A, but still, it just didn't seem like the level of play changed his success. So will he start out at AAA is going to be the question. My thing with him is, like, when I watch all the highlights, you see the power, looks like he has good speed. My concern is he a talented guy like a Grady Sizemore that gets up to the big leagues and does play well and does start to look like a star, but can he stay healthy? That's my biggest concern. Like,
right.
Last year when you introduced me to George Valera, when I was still trying to learn the farm system, and seeing that swing that he has, and then for him to not even come up this year and make any kind of an impact with the power shortage that we had in our outfield, it was kind of disappointing. I know they brought Oscar up towards the end of the year, and you could almost see why he was down at AAA. When he came up, you didn't see him really catch fire at all. So there's a lot of things. In other words, there's opportunity, is what you're saying. There's opportunity for DeLauter to keep doing what he's doing, and should have no problem making our roster at some point during the season next year.
Yeah, and there's no doubt he has doubles power. He's got some gap-to-gap power, and they do go over the fence sometimes. But there are some benefits to kind of that short, compacted swing that he has. And our good friend Todd at Guardian's Perspective noted that, and this was posted last week, so these aren't completely updated as of right now, but at the time of this tweet, DeLauter had 10 walks to just 6 strikeouts through 17 games played. Guardians love that, more walks than strikeouts. His short, compact stroke leads to high contact rate. But again, some scouts worry about him cutting off his ability to drive the ball. So I think this isn't just a Chase DeLauter thing. This might be an organizational thing where we've talked about it before. They love drafting high contact guys who don't strike out a lot, hoping they can develop that power. Yeah. But it's not always that easy as just, now they're going to be a 30-plus home run guy. There has to be power in the profile somewhere, which it always has been for DeLauter. But again, that swing that leads him to not strike out as much and make contact is cutting off that ability to hit for power. So it's kind of like all these guys have to find a happy medium. I think the same could be said for Brian Rocchio, too. He's a guy whose power just fell off a cliff last year. When he's got 20-plus home run power in his bat. But again, he was so worried about getting his strikeout rate down that he didn't just cut down on the strikeouts, he cut down on the power, too. But it's just something with Chase DeLauter. Like, I think he's going to get to more of that power. And I think the closer he does get to Cleveland and possibly even being in big league camp and getting to work with whoever the major league coaches are going to end up being, I think that's really going to help him kind of get closer to that happy medium. And I'm not saying he's going to be like the next guy. Kyle Manzardo is another guy who does not strike out a lot, which is weird because you think about guys like Kyle Schwarber, right? And it's like he's either hitting solo home runs or he's striking out like 50% of the time. Max Muncy's another guy. Like they're really 3 true outcome type guys. Where Kyle Manzardo is a high OBP guy, but he's also a high power guy. And that's probably like, James, I picture them making, like listening to trade offers for Aaron Savali in July. And they're probably sitting back like, he does what? He has, what's his OBP? And he has how many home runs? Like, that's exactly what they're trying to do with the guys they have in their farm system. And Tampa Bay was able to do that with Kyle Manzardo, who hit a 460-foot home run that was 108.3 miles per hour off the bat. I don't know that anybody on our entire team hit a ball that hard last year. Gabriel Arias probably did, actually. But the point being, James, I'm loving that exit velocity because the harder you hit the ball, the better chance you have of getting that ball into the seats.
Well, we're talking about 2 left-handed bats now with that short right field fence.
Mm-hmm.
You know, having Manzardo start the season at first base would be my goal.
Yeah.
And that's with me.
DH Naylor.
Yeah.
It's just like Bell and Naylor, except now it's Naylor and Manzardo.
Exactly. I mean, and that's me not knowing a whole lot about Manzardo other than what the few highlights I've saw from the Arizona Fall League.
He's been putting out video after video after video.
Why not? Right? Why not start him there? But yeah. I guess we'll find out. I'm just encouraged that we're going to have somebody that can play that position. What do you know about him defensively?
He's good. Yeah. Everything I've heard, he's not going to kill you over there, which is good. And he's leading the NFL in homers and extra base hits, which of course is good to see. Because even if it's not necessarily home run power, like I'm not saying the Guardians need a guy who's going to hit 50 home runs, but they need more slugging. They need more extra base hits so it doesn't take 5 singles to score a run all the time. And Keith Law said about Kyle Manzardo that he can hit, and it's a lot of hard contact when he saw him. He showed good pitch recognition as well, getting hits on all pitch types. So he doesn't really have like a weakness as far as a pitch type. He can hit velocity, and the homer came off a hanging changeup. It's a pretty simple swing, and if the added power he's shown since he came off the injured list for Cleveland, 6 homers in 21 games in AAA Columbus, then 3 more in 8 games in the hitter-friendly AFL, he's going to be at least an above-average regular at first. I like the sound of that profile because you got to think you do have Jose Ramirez and Josh Naylor still in the middle of that order. Whether the new manager chooses to put Jose in the 2-hole or moves him back down to the 3-hole, chances are you're going to have Naylor in the 3 or 4-hole and probably a Kyle Manzardo and maybe a trade acquisition also in the middle of that order to kind of beef that up a little bit because I think Quan at the top is fine. You have him. I like the idea of Jimenez now in that 6-7 spot. Kind of give the bottom of the lineup something with Bo Naylor now, who has a new fresh haircut. Did you see that
video? No, I did not see that.
Yeah, Bo cut his hair off. He doesn't have all that hair anymore. But again,
just be faster.
Right. And for all the disappointment, James, I think what we were able to see out of the rookie pitchers, Tanner Bybee, Gavin Williams, and Logan Allen, in addition to the steps forward Bo Naylor was able to make, I think that's all stuff that they got to feel really, really, really good about heading into 2024. And I think it kind of helps give them a better idea of what they need this offseason once, the moves really start happening. At the winter meetings, the general managers meetings, when I think we could hear this team in some rumblings because I think they're in the perfect position to finally unload some of these prospects and really make a move for a difference maker, not just taking a shot in the dark at Josh Bell and Mike Zunino. Actually getting a guy who's can really, really help you in the middle of that order.
I'm a little concerned when you say about trade rumblings because the last 2 off seasons where we had Matt Olson and Sean Murphy. They both end up in Atlanta. So if you want to bring up your guy right now that you're interested in and acquiring in a trade, that's going to take out your leadoff hitter, though. So why don't you bring this guy's name up right now which you would like to see on our roster?
I really felt for Browns fans yesterday when they're just sitting on Twitter in agony all day waiting for a trade, because it really takes me back to last year's, the 2022 trade deadline, when I was 150% sure they were going to upgrade that catcher spot. They were going to make some kind of move for a bat, and they did absolutely nothing. And it drove me crazy. So I really empathize with the Browns fans yesterday.
Well, you know what I heard, Mel? I heard Chris Antonetti out of habit had to go to Berea to try to talk to the team and bring them back to earth after not making a quarterback move. Just because
I can't even that. Yeah, that quarterback. It's the Browns, of course. There's quarterback controversy, but yeah, I will admit you're right. The guy I'm going to bring up, who I've brought up on Twitter, a lot of people have. It might very well cost us Stephen Kwan, and it's going to cost us a lot more than Stephen Kwan if they choose Stephen Kwan out of the outfielders. But let's preface this, James, by saying the news broke today that the Padres had to take out a loan for $50 million to essentially pay their players. So they went out, they extended Fernando Tatis a while back. They get Manny Machado. They extend him last year. They trade for Juan Soto last year, and they just keep bringing in all these stars.
Bogart.
And I've said it. I want my roses. I've said it for the last year. Everybody called me crazy for saying they'd trade Tatis or Soto. They're going to trade Tatis or Soto. That was never going to be sustainable once Machado signed that extension. And that's not even talking about the pitchers. Like Blake Snell's a free agent now. What are they going to do to fill Blake Snell's spot in the rotation? Well, this may be the only time that I agree with Jim Bowden, but Jim Bowden actually listed the Cleveland Guardians as a top 5 landing spot for Juan Soto. And before you hit pause on your recording or throw your phone into the wall or call me an idiot, hear me out. I know Juan Soto is a rental. They would have to re-sign him. He's probably going to want close to $300 million. But why not? You have Jose Ramirez on a team-friendly extension. Sure, you got to worry about Josh Naylor, but they lock these kids up young, right? You don't have a guy you're paying a lot of money right now. David Blitzer is supposed to be in. Are we going to be able to see any cash flow from this minority owner? Obviously, we know the last time Cleveland had a minority owner, their payroll was the highest it had ever been. They went on their World Series run. All was well. So, the Guardians, why does it make sense? So, we have Jim Bowden notes, we have a young, expensive starting rotation of Tristan McKenzie, Bybee, Allen, Gavin Williams, and we have a strong bullpen. I disagree, but that's neither here nor there. What we're missing is impact hitters. I agree. A trade for Soto would drastically improve their chances of making the playoffs next year by bolstering the middle of their lineup beyond Jose Ramirez and Josh Naylor. Agreed. The Guardians could potentially swap their ace, Shane Bieber, and left fielder Stephen Kwan for Soto. Bieber is also a free agent after next year and could help the Padres fill the void left by Snell in their rotation, and Kwan, a Gold Glove Award winner, would give them improved defense in left field and another high on-base percentage player for the top of their lineup. Of course, from a Guardian standpoint, if they aren't in the race come July, they could always turn around and deal Soto at the trade deadline.
That part sounds terrible. For all the Juan Soto jerseys that would get sold, right? From March, April, May.
I wouldn't even make that deal unless you could extend them right away. I don't think, I'm not giving up and it's not just going to be Bieber and Kwan. It would be Bieber and Kwan and probably a couple minor leaguers. But I don't know if you saw it, James, but a couple weeks back, Jose Ramirez was in the Dominican Republic hanging out with Edwin Encarnacion and none other than Juan Soto. You don't think with how goofy Jose Ramirez is that he didn't drop in there at least a few times? Hey, man, what do you think about Cleveland? You should come play with me in Cleveland. Like, I just bought a house there. I'm raising my kids here. Like, I started a life here.
Well, don't have him come visit now because it's too damn cold out.
Right.
Even though if we were in the World Series, you'd have to be playing baseball in this weather.
Right, and he did play in Washington when they went to the World Series. So, and I think Trey Turner hated being on the West Coast, right? He's from the East Coast. He always wanted to come back east. Of course, Juan Soto's from the Dominican Republic, not New Jersey. But the East Coast is closer to the Dominican Republic than San Diego is, right? So I think he's one of those guys where it's not as much about the weather as it is like, how far am I from home? Like that's far. There have always been rumblings that he didn't like being out west. So is it a long shot? Yeah, absolutely. It's a long shot, but this is the type of like game-changing move I would love to see the Guardians take a swing and make, because you have Jose Ramirez and he's past his age 30 season. We know he could fall off a cliff at any point, and his production, and like, let's address the elephant in the room. It has the past 2 years in the second half. Of course, 2 years ago, the injury, right? We're going to go with that. But he wasn't great in the second half last year either. He had moments. He got hot a couple times. Again, I think that oblique injury to Josh Naylor really derailed our season around the trade deadline. And obviously in August, he didn't have that protection behind him in Josh Naylor. So that could be a big reason why he struggled. But just think how many boxes Juan Soto checks, right? You get a power bat. You get a guy with a high on-base percentage. You get your outfielder. You get a great clubhouse guy. You get to replace Ahmed Rosario and give Jose a new best friend. Since so much was made about Jose Ramirez needing to have a best friend, there you go. They're already hanging out in the offseason, and they don't even have to be.
I don't know. I mean,
would you give up Stephen Kwan, though?
For a short term, how many years?
If you could extend him, like if the deal hinged on him signing an extension.
If there's an extension, yes. If
I agree.
Not,
I'd do it in a heartbeat.
I guess if you would look at it like this, because Bieber, you're probably going to trade by the deadline anyways, right? If not, it should be during this offseason.
Right.
So you would basically be giving up Kwan, but then let's say Bieber was on the team to start the season all the way towards the trade deadline. So now you're in a situation again that you would either trade Bieber or Soto. Your return on Soto is probably going to be better than Shane Bieber, even though he's a starting pitcher. Unless Shane starts out on fire. I know he struggled last year. I don't know. That's a good question. I just don't see it. I think it's a pipe dream. It sounds like more something that when you have new with all the renovation done, not this going into this season, but maybe we're talking into next off season, kind of like in '94 when they opened up Jacobs Field. They already had a nice young base to the team, and then they started adding veteran players to them and starts kind of stacking the lineup that way. I kind of see that maybe for them going more of a bold move, maybe a year from now. I don't know. It's
going to be interesting, and I think we're going to kind of learn a lot early on too about what kind of approach they're going to take in the offseason. Once they get this manager, which I think in 2 weeks when we hop on here again, I'm pretty sure we should have a manager by then, and we'll know. If we're free, we may even hop on to discuss the new manager. If when that happens, if it's before we record next, then we're going to start hearing some rumblings like, well, what do you think about this guy or that guy? Or are you Are you in love with the idea of Stephen Kwan at the top of your lineup, or do you have other ideas? And of course, that's going to take some time for a new manager to get to know these guys. But I think they're going to be scared away from free agency. I think they're going to go the trade route. And we'll just see. Are they going to make that decision now on Brian Roquio versus Gabriel Arias? Or do they need some more time? Because they waited so long to let Gabriel Arias have the position. So no matter what happens, the World Series may end tonight. The offseason's going to be kicking off. And we really get to dig in and see how this team can get better and see what they do, because I think the front office knows this team has holes. They're not far away. They learned a lot last year, with the pitchers and Bo Naylor, like I mentioned. So they got to go in and plug those holes. And we got one of the best front offices in the business, so I trust them to do that.
Yeah. And the World Series tonight, I mean, good luck to the Rangers winning their first ever World Series. I think our team resembles more of what Arizona is. So all respect to Arizona if they can fight.
Big fan of Corey Seager.
Yeah, and if you remember, when I've been watching him in the playoffs, the way he's been hot now, do you remember in the offseason when we talked about when the shift was going away, what player would have the most improvement? And Corey Seager was right near at the top of that list. And right now he's just hitting the ball over the fence, so it doesn't matter about that. But
no matter where they put the guys.
Yeah, it don't matter about a shift or not. But that's somebody that's benefited from it. But yeah, he's a lot of fun to watch.
That Rangers lineup is a blast to watch when they're kind of humming like they are right now. It's a shame Adolis Garcia had to go down, but I think he more than carried his weight in the time he was in the lineup.
Yeah, absolutely played fantastic. So it's been great. I'm just thankful to anybody that's been listening to the pod and watching the World Series and loving baseball still, as we're now into November.
Snow on the ground.
Yeah. So, but yeah, I know it's football season and the Cavs and basketball season started, but let's hopefully finish strong tonight and have a classic World Series game.
Ohio State, number 1 in the CFP rankings. What do you think about that?
Don't care. I'm a Florida State fan, to be honest with you. So they would play Florida State in that first round right now, but we all know that top 4 and top 6
it doesn't matter right now.
Around. Yeah, it's going to move around.
They control their own destiny, but I think a lot depends on how they choose to sort this Michigan drama out. But either way, it's going to be a fun fall. The baseball postseason's been great. Need the Cavs to get healthy, Browns to get healthy. And, it's going to be a fun fall into winter. So, Like James said, I want to thank everybody for listening. Like I mentioned on my pop-up video last week, we're going to be on with you every other week in the off-season. Unless some big news breaks, we'll try to hop on and do a live show and talk about it with you guys. But we're really excited to do some of those live shows, hopefully bring you some fun guests this off-season. And just kind of get through till the buses head to Goodyear in February. Just, ride out the winter as best we can. But in the meantime, make sure you are following the podcast page at Guardians OTCLE so you can keep up with all the show news, guest notes, team news, anything of that nature. We'll post it on the Guardians of the CLE Twitter page. And to help get you through the winter, all these sports James and I just talked about, we got you covered at BelieveLandMediaLLC.com, where the high school team, including James, has been doing a tremendous job covering high school football, volleyball, going into basketball season. The playoffs are starting for high school, so you don't want to miss a beat. There's tons of games going on. The team's been doing a great job. Super proud of the guys. Definitely go check out their podcasts and all their written content. It's been a blast to watch them. But yeah, go Rangers tonight. I hope they close it out. It's going to be sad to see baseball go. I'm going to miss this in the dog days of winter. But yeah, I want to thank everybody for listening. Until we talk again, everybody stay safe, stay healthy, and go Guardians, Cavs, Browns, Ohio State. Screw the Knowles.
No.
See ya.
Take care, everybody.